That's why Prabhupada insisted, right, even in the Bowery, in the Skid Row of New York, in the pits of New York, that his lectures be recorded. And we're so thankful for that.
Isn't it true that at one instance he was all by himself with nobody in front of him and he still used the tape recorder to take his lecture?
Yes, that's the first recording. That's that recording I said. When you hear this, Om Padrana Tivaran Bhasya, there's nobody in the room. That became the introduction to the Gita. He was doing Mangalacharya. He dictated the introduction to the Gita. There was nobody in the room. You can hear a pin drop. He's in this windowless room that's shaped like a railroad car. Dr. Mishra had arranged it for him. And he's taking advantage to translate the Gita. He started all over again. He translated the Gita in India, but the manuscript was stolen. And then even when he was in that room, his typewriter was stolen. So he just kept going.
It's a beautiful dichotomy that you hear Prabhupada expressing his helplessness and he's not sure. And then on the other hand, he's doing things like this where he's just recording it from in those days tape recorders too. He's just recording it when nobody's in front of him. He's giving a full blast lecture. And then when Mukunda and go meet him in that place, he's already stacked up typewritten manuscripts with a typewriter with a little bed sheet for a makeshift room, and he's already having the vision of the future. Yet, it's a beautiful dichotomy.
That's real humility. Real humility doesn't mean that you don't do anything. It's the humility of Krishna Kaviraj, who says in the CC, I am lower than the worm and stool. Whoever heals my name loses all pious credits. We remember that verse. We don't remember a few verses later when he praises his Diksha Guru, Lord Nityananda. But by the grace of Lord Nityananda, I know I can finish this work. He's 97 years old, he's going blind, he's handshaking, but he knows by the mercy of Guru Maharaj he can do it because his Guru will help him. That's real humility. That's the humility of Arjuna, who when he understood the Gita, didn't go off and be a sadhu, but he was very humbly mowing down the enemy like anything, with both arms, savyasachin, ambidextrous. You couldn't even see, you couldn't even see, it was going so fast it looked slow, like an airplane propeller, That's real humility. Yeah, that's Prabhupada. And that's why I'll tell you, okay, that's good, because the first time I saw actually Prabhupada in Vapu was at that airport in Detroit. That's where we usually saw him first, because he was always coming in the airways, like Narada Muni, We saw him in Metro Airport in Detroit, and the plane was late. He must have been the last person off the plane. And, we were doing what we could never do today, post 9/11. We took over the whole lounge, right? And this thunderous kirtan, and the businessmen are like, the airport officials, we didn't know what was going on. And then I knew Prabhupada must be in the vicinity, finally, because there was all these phalanxes of devotees going. They were just bowing down, in lines, en masse. And then I saw His Divine Grace floating up the escalator. And it happened to me too. Something hit the back of my legs. And I went, You know why? Here's why. Because in one person, you saw what you never see in the material world. Absolute power manifested through absolute humility. Make me dance. I can't do this. You do it through me. I'm your man. I'm here. You make me do it. That's real humility. So we all bow down. And the first thing, what was the first thing I heard out of Prabhupada's Lotus Mount? The cause of all suffering is due to misidentification with this material body. It's so basic, but he said it with such depths and realization. We all went, wow. Yeah. So the Vapu is an inspiration to serve eternal Prabhupada forever. And I have other stories, but Vapu is important. Just to serve. And if you just have the Vapu, and you don't really know much about his teachings, what to speak of following, then when the Vapu goes, you go. You can't take it. It's not the same anymore, right? And that happened to a lot of his disciples. If they didn't really have the depth of philosophical conviction, along with loving, Prabhupada, the personality, then they couldn't take it. They left. But some of them came back when they realized more of the body. Anything, Navajit had a question.
Just real quick, he was mentioning how the disciples went to London. They also went to Germany. Was it BhaktiVedanta's desire that they also go there?
Yeah, as far as I know, and even one godbrother came out of there, Satchidananda, I think his name was. He was the one that Prabhupada said, and I have a German godbrother, and he had gone to India looking for God, and he saw in all these temples so many demigods. They were doing so many strenuous things. And then he finally went to a Krishna temple, and Krishna was just enjoying with the gopis, Radha and Krishna. He said, this must be God. He's just having fun. Yeah, as far as but Srila BhaktiVedanta, from what I understand, actually was not pleased with their results. Because, again, you know how Prabhupada introduced the regulative principles to the first generation? First he just got them chanting. You heard the tapes. Hare Krishna, it's very simple, pure-hearted. Hare Hare, it's off tune, but they're really sincere. And then finally on Janmashtami, Prabhupada says, this is September 66, the first Janmashtami in ISKCON. He says, so tomorrow we'll have initiation.
That's the storefront.
At the storefront in 26 Second Avenue. They didn't know what he's talking about. Tomorrow we'll have initiation. So Prabhupada said, initiation means that the spiritual master agrees to take charge of the disciple. And the disciple agrees to accept the spiritual master as God. Any questions? They were so stunned, they didn't know what to say. This is the teaching technique Prabhupada used. So when there were no questions, because they were too stunned to ask any questions, Swamiji got up off the dais, walked to his right, walked out the storefront, walked across the courtyard, went up to his apartment, and left his fledgling would-be disciples there. And you know what they were saying? You can read it in the Lama. Hey man, did you hear that? Swamiji just dropped the bomb, man. I don't know if I can do that, man. Well, the only person who wasn't there was Keith. Keith was in Bellevue. His parents had tricked him into signing himself into the famous mental institution, Bellevue.
Keith Ham, right?
Keith Ham, who became Kirtanananda. So Wally, who became the Maharaji later, walks to Bellevue. It's in the Lower East Side. And says, hey Keith, the Swami just dropped a real bomb today. And he said we have to accept the spiritual master as God. So shrewd Keith said, well, we're already accepting everything he says is the absolute truth. We may as well accept him as God. Why not? Wally wasn't satisfied, so he walked back to the storefront. And he said to Howard, who became Hayagriva later, Howard, will you please go up to Swamiji's apartment and ask him what he meant by what he said? So Howard goes up and he says, now Howard, you didn't know Hayagriva, but Hayagriva was a big, large-bodied person, had long, at that time, long, Prabhupada called it Shakespearean locks. He was an English professor. And so he had a big, booming voice. So he said, Swamiji, what you told us this morning, does it mean we have to accept the spiritual master? Does that mean the spiritual master is God? So Prabhupada said, no, God is God. The spiritual master is his representative. You're to worship him as God because he can give God to you. Is that clear? Then he is not God. No, God is God, the spiritual master is his representative. Is that clear? And it was, and so they went ahead and they took initiation. But he still didn't stress the rules so much, because Prabhupada, he was praying to Rupa, Radha, right? Shri Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. And Rupa Goswami, his highest principle is Yena Tena Prakarena Mana Krishna Niveshaye Sarve Siddhi Nishedhasyor Etayo Revakim Kara. Somehow or other, the mind should be fixed on Krishna. That's what Swamiji had done all summer. He had him chanting Hare Krishna. All the rules and prohibitions in Shastra are to be maidservants of this highest principle. Get them fixed in your mind on Krishna. So he stressed more of the rounds. At first he said 64, then it was 32, then finally, okay, no less than 16. Now he had initiation on Vyasa Puja, then he had one 2 weeks later in Radhastami, then there was one around Govardhan Puja time in October. Finally in November, and we know the date, the exact date, because you see the notice, Wali, who became Umapati, goes up to Swamiji and says, "Hey Swamiji, are there any rules to this club?" I mean, they really didn't have a clue what was going on. You know, Prabhupada's talking about a worldwide mission, and they think it's just a few guys on the Lower East Side. You know? Any rules to this club? So what does Swamiji say? Very good boy. Very good boy. It's like, I thought you'd never ask, right? He knows it has to come from them, from us. When we're ready to follow disciplines, we'll ask, right? And so the next day, November 25th, 1966, which you see enshrined in many temples, this notice, you can see it in Mayapur, where the Mala Matajis make the garlands, and back to Prabhupada Vyasasana in that alley. And you turn around from where they make, and you look in the board, you see highlights of Prabhupada's preaching, and you see this notice. November 25th, 1966. All initiated devotees must, the first thing is, must not take any kind of intoxicating substance, down to coffee, tea, you know, cigarettes. Must have no illicit sexual connection. And must chant a minimum of 16 rounds daily. Must avoid unnecessary sporting. Must not mix intimately with non-devotees. It's reading like a mini Hari Bhakti Vilas, you know, like a Vaishnava behavior guide. Only when the devotees asked did he put it in writing and posted it. He knew it had to come from us. And we did a lesson in the seminar on how he went from obscurity to Swamiji to Prabhupada to Founder Acharya. At every stage, he was gradually revealing to us his position after Krishna revealed to him what he had to do. So, whereas the Gaudiya Math people in Europe, what happened to them? Here's a good, this is why I brought it up. Now in Bhakti Saranga Maharaj, whom Prabhupada helped start that Bombay Gaudiya Math, Bhakti Saranga Maharaj is one of those Gaudiya Math sannyasis who went to Europe. And he was approached, Prabhupada told us on the recording, by one Marquis of Zetland. Prabhupada, I think he's trying to say the Shetland Islands off the coast of Scotland. There's a territory there. So one lord, you know, the lord of the class system in India, approached Bhakti Saranga Maharaj and said, Swamiji, can you make me a brahmin? Oh yes, just follow these rules. No intoxication, no illicit sex, no meeting, no gambling. Impossible! So the Gaudiya Math sannyasis, they were rather discouraged by the people they met. Because they thought, these people can't even follow the... How is Mahaprabhu's movement going to go to every town and village? They began to think maybe it's a metaphor, maybe it's some imagination. It's just a way of speaking. Literally, every town and village, I mean, these people are animals, they were thinking. Because their depth of surrender wasn't the depth of our Prabhupada surrender. Prabhupada knew how to do it. He was empowered by Srila Rupa Goswami. Prabhupada is operating in the highest principles. Somehow or other, get him to be Krishna conscious through rules and regulations will follow as they become Krishna conscious.
I read, but like you said later, in I think 73 or 74, Prabhupada in the same Germany was talking to Hamsadutta Maharaj at the time. How can they do anything if they cannot even understand these simple rules? It's so simple. So he's talking like the London Prabhupada is telling Hamsadutta that they can't even follow his minimum basic rules.
He's talking about his initiated disciples?
No, he's talking about the general population. So Hamsadutta is explaining about some people in that walk.
Yes.
These are the villagers and... What I'm trying to say is, Srila Prabhupada didn't do it in the beginning, but the Gaudiya version did, people did it right off the bat.
Yeah.
Prabhupada waited.
Yes. He knows how to do it. That's why you'll see in this lesson 8, if we do lesson 8, you know, Prabhupada invited his godbrothers to to come to Mayapur and meet his Western disciples for a big groundbreaking ceremony in Mayapur. Tamal Krishna Maharaj had gotten the land in the end of 71. They had a groundbreaking in March 72. Prabhupada invited the godbrothers. Many of them came. There's pictures of this. Prabhupada's in the pit, putting an undershade in the pit. On the one hand, his godbrothers appreciated what he'd done, because he was doing what BhaktiVedanta had asked them all to do. Spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. I think there's one person who was doing it. But they had issues with him. And one issue was that Prabhupada was letting us call him Prabhupada. They said that's only for BhaktiVedanta, not recognizing that this is the person who actually inherited the Gaura Jati to do that. But they had a bigger issue. The bigger issue was, why are you allowing men and women to serve together in these centers? This is not done in India. And they stood on this principle from 7th canto, Narada Muni tells Yudhishthira Maharaj, that a man is like a butter pot, a lady's like fire. You put the butter pot too close to the fire, it's going to melt. That's true. It's a law of nature. And they were standing on this. What you're doing is scandalous. You're going to create scandal. So what did Prabhupada say? Look, when I went to the West, what did I find? I found from the time they're toddlers, boys and girls are mixing freely in the West. And not only that, they're educated the same way. You can't change a culture overnight. What am I to do? Deny half the human race an opportunity to access the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Because outside those centers, unlike in India where there was at least remnants of Vedic culture, outside those centers he was establishing, there was no Krishna consciousness. It was a wasteland. It was a desert of materialism.
But that's the key thing. Prabhupada had an unflinching faith in Mahaprabhu's mercy, that mercy itself is clean.
Yes, and Prabhupada is they're standing on a valid principle, but Prabhupada is standing on a higher principle. Rupa Goswami, somehow or other, get them to be Krishna conscious. The rules and regulations, and he even wrote this in purports. He would answer their objections in purports in the CC. So how to do it? Takes a lot of empowerment, it takes a lot of surrender. The more we surrender, the more we'll know how to do it. It starts with desire. So it's getting a little late. Speaking of desire, you're getting hunger pangs? But tomorrow night we're going to be where? At some hall somewhere?
It's a center, Harikrishna Spiritual Center.
Where's that?
That's in Tempe.
Tempe.
It's around 15 to 20 minutes from here.
From here. Okay. All right. And so more people, it's more central to where most people. Okay.
But there will be around like 50 to 60 people.
So we'll be doing it on a screen or a TV?
You would have a TV over there.
TV, okay. All right. So,
And are you already decided what
yes.
we do tomorrow?
We're going to do Finding Our Mission and His Mission. I
Okay,
think
finding.
that's appropriate for this summer. It's all about connecting more with the mission. Are there any more questions? I just hope I can come back because, I mean, there's a whole 11-minute video that goes with this slide that was put together by a Pandava Singh, a UK Indian youth, who never saw Prabhupada in Baku. When they see this video, wow, has he ever met Prabhupada in Vanya? He's really close. You've seen it? Oh, is it on the?
Melbourne record.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's such powerful evidence that it's not a matter of knowing Prabhupada in Baku. It's a matter of living in the light and love of his teachings. Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada.